Congratulations on this wonderful film, and thank you for sharing it with us. We are going to begin with the principal investigator, and that's Luis Cárcamo-Huechante. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to say a bit about themselves and then talk about their involvement in the creation of this film and their hopes for this film.
Mari Compuche, Mari Pulamgen, Mapuche greeting to you this afternoon in this unique moment for us, which is presenting our collaborative work that is reflected in this documentary video, a way to put native views in the foreground to tell not only you today here, but to tell a broader audience about the native stories and histories of these lands. So my full name is Luis Cárcamo-Huechante. I joined the faculty in the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Texas at Austin in 2009. So I'm from a different native region in what is today called the Americas. So I position myself as an indigenous guest in these lands. As a scholar and as a person, I feel always like wherever you are, the first step for you is to engage the native lands and peoples where you are. So for me, it was very meaningful to craft a conversation, a good relations, to craft effective cultural and intellectual relations with important people who are native to this region, to these lands in the Southwest, in Turtle Island. So among the people that I feel you got to get connected are certainly the elders in native communities. And that's why I was fortunate enough to be able to develop conversation, good relations, friendship with Elder Marika Alvarado, and then her beautiful circle of indigenous women here in Austin, Central Texas. So how then I came to this specific initiative, the production of a video documentary on Central Austin, and specifically the story of Peace Park. In 2022 or 2023, I was invited by my colleague Edmund Gordon here at UT Austin to participate in the contextualization and memorialization initiative he was putting together at the time. The goal of my participation was going to be offering a Native American and indigenous angle on the history of the lands and communities where UT Austin is located, namely what is today known as Central Austin. As a response to the invitation, I proposed that it was critical to work on this project under the guidance and wisdom of an elder from the Native American community here on this land. Therefore, I got in touch with Elder Marika Alvarado and of the Earth Institute of Indigenous Cultures and Teaching to carry out the work together on the history of the lands on which we study, we learn, and we work. Through multiple conversations, our collaborative research took the shape of a documentary video, collaborating with indigenous relatives Marina Islas and Evie Carr, and the filmmaking expertise of Mauricio Hernández Serrano under the guidance of Elder Marika Alvarado. There is a methodological aspect in the work we carry out that is very relevant to share. So we decided to go to different sites here in Austin and around Austin, where Elder Marika Alvarado, places that Elder Marika Alvarado pointed out as key sites of native history and the native experience here in Central Texas. So we visited several places. The Comanche Park in Williamson County, Peace Park here in Central Austin, the area around 38th and a half Street and North Lamar, because that was an important site of is an important site in the history of the Tonkawa community, the Tonkawa people. We went to the San Jose Cemetery in the Montopolis area, which is another important point of reference for native history in this region. So we went to different places, and methodologically, it's important to highlight that there were sort of key components of each visit to each place. Walking together, listening to the voice of Elder Marika Alvarado, asking questions, talking back and forth for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours together on the specific place. So that was a lot of learning for all of us as a collective, as a team. And after we carried out that kind of methodological practice for several months, after that experience, we decided to just focus on one place, Peace Park, and the surroundings around where we have UT Austin now. So that's the way we decided to have a kind of place-based approach to generate this sort of audiovisual work. So I also want to highlight that throughout this, I think the relevance of this documentary video is that it created a space and time for a native narrative and view on the history, on the stories and histories of the lands where we are. As you notice, the wind is a very important element, not only metaphorical, but literal in the narrative and in the very staging of the whole documentary video. The wind moving the grasses, the wind moving and shaking our clothes or dresses, the wind being mentioned in several occasions by Elder Marika Alvarado. So I hope that that wind becomes a kind of force that stays with you, some of you or many of you today, as an invitation to go in the right direction, which is to engage the native history and experience of these lands. to engage in learning from the voices of our native elders in these lands. Because what is coming out through the narrative of Elder Marika Alvarado is a sort of untold story, an untold history of these sites, very important sites for native lands here in the Southwest, but sites of colonization too, sites of removal, of Indian removal, of removal of plants, of removal of human and non-human lives across decades and centuries. So I'm in deep gratitude to the voice, the wisdom, and the experience and generosity of Elder Marika Alvarado and her circle of women for giving me the opportunity to learn and grow also as an indigenous guest in these lands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. We're next going to hear from the director of this video documentary, Mauricio Hernández Serrano.
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technical aspect after following that. So my name is Mauricio. I am an MFA student at the Department of Radio, Television, and Film here at the Moody College. And I am from Mexico City. Working on this project was one of the most meaningful experiences so far that I've had in the program. And as someone who grew up in a place where indigenous history is very visible a lot of the times in direct conflict and direct tension with everyday life in the media, it inhabits architecture, food, music, language. A lot of Spanish comes from different dialects. I was very surprised when I got here to find that Central Texas's native history survives mostly through memory or through archives that are not very accessible, or through oral history. So this project represented a very special opportunity to engage with that and to get to know it directly from the source. So that was really, really, really just mind-blowing. Especially because the layers that of this history, they aren't gone. How I thought initially, they're still there. It's just not, they're not just immediately visible. So the hope of collaborating, of making this project is to make them, to amplify them at least a little bit, because they're not gone, and that's something that is really beautiful to know. All right, so I'm gonna read a little bit. Movement is a core concept in Elder Marika's testimony. And this doesn't just mean physical movement, but a way of being. So the idea that indigenous life has always been mobile challenges many of the concepts that we have of what a territory is or what a border is. And so this same idea of movement was present in the editing. As I've studied in this program, documentary filmmaking sometimes has structures or ways of articulating ideas that are fixed and that have proven to work before. However, the involvement of Elder Marika sometimes challenged that in a really, really beautiful way, because sometimes these structures or these kind of like dramatic progressions or presentation of information didn't necessarily fit her viewpoints or amplify what she was trying to say. So it was really great to have her be a part of every editing stage, right? Seeing every cut and providing feedback for it. No, truly, she was very intentional, very detail oriented, so very intentional about what you hear, for example, right? No. No, it was truly very special because she knew exactly. For example, just to say something, if I added an ambient of bugs, she would know what it was right away, and sometimes she would approve of it. Sometimes she would say this is not, cohesive with the part of the land that we're talking about. Similarly with the wind or even birds. So just engaging with someone that has that like instinctual knowledge was really eye-opening, and it shaped the end result in a very beautiful way. All right, I'm gonna hurry up, I promise. All right, so yeah. No, I just don't want to, like, I want to. But anyway, you get my point. Every sound held meaning for her, and it was great to be able to kind of like contribute to shaping that. And it pushed me to rethink that form can honor content, but not necessarily override it. And last but not least, this project was never about representing someone else's story, but rather having Marina, Evie, and Elder Marika be authors of the documentary, and not just characters. So they shaped what you see on screen, the narrative, the tone, the rhythm, and that level of involvement is rare. And I think it certainly made the end result stronger. So as someone who loves documentary and likes to make it, it challenged many of the ideas that I've developed during this program of what collaboration can be. So I'm not gonna say it was simple or that it was easy or always funny, but it was always worth it, and that is really important. So it pushed me to listen differently. It pushed me to let go of control of certain ideas, of editing, of structure, and it made room for true collaboration. It was also personally a gift. I got to know this community. I got to know of your work. I got to know, I don't know, many. I was part of just one of the walks that Dr. Luis just described in Peace Park, and walking through it with Elder Marika and learning about the creek, the grasses, the trees, the plant life, the architecture, some of the historical remains, it made Austin feel different. If what I described of her knowledge based on what she heard is true, then you have no idea how much there is in her head when she is presently there, right? And she can describe things very, just, I don't know, in a very, she knows a lot. So just being part of that walk was just very meaningful, and it made me look at the city differently. I used to think it was like a very new place and a place that was changing very quickly, and all these skyscrapers were coming out of nowhere. But now I see there's a lot of depth beneath, and I see layers of history. And I also got to know the lives that have moved through these spaces long before the streets that we know today were built. And it's really special to know that that presence is still alive and that it pushes through this landscape. So being a part of a project that wants to amplify that, to make it more visible, even in a small way, is something that I will always cherish. So yeah, thank you very much for letting me be part of it.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Marina, Islas. I am the Community Archives Program and Exhibits Manager at the Austin History Center. When I was approached for this project, I was actually the Indigenous and Latine Community Archivist for the Austin History Center, so I've changed roles since then. But I've worked with Elder Marika Alvarado for a long time, since at least 2016. I can't do math, but it's been in various capacities. As someone who worked at the Mexican American Cultural Center, we worked together there, and as a student of hers, and also as a volunteer and helper. And I mean, I've learned so much from Shichu over the years. And I continue to learn from her every single day. And so being invited to be a part of this project, it made perfect sense to bring the archives to the stories that she had to share, and to provide that proof that these things were here and that Native people are still here. I think it's one of those stories, it's many stories that people forget, and it's often overlooked. And to me, it's so important that these stories come to life and that they are heard. And so yes, naturally I was like, absolutely, let's do this, let's make this happen. Whatever way I can help, I'll help. And it was many, many hours and many walks and a lot of back and forth, but all very much worth it. For especially too, I see this documentary as an opportunity and a conversation starter. It's not the end-all be-all. It is the opening. It is the beginning of something bigger, and an invitation to the folks who are here, who have been here, who have stories from their own elders to share. Because one of the things that's interesting about this documentary is a lot of the archival footage from the Austin History Center, the photography, it comes from our very first archival collection, which is the Elijah Pease collection. And so it came directly from his scrapbooks. And to me, to be able to show that footage to go alongside these stories is just, it's historic. And so again, I think the problem is that the majority of what we have in our archival collections is not from Native folks. It's not from Native families. It's from the white perspective. And we're really great with our community archives program in that we're bringing in more voices, and we have over the last couple of decades. However, the Native stories are still lacking. And so again, this moment, this documentary is this invitation to folks who have Native ties to come, share your stories, and let's talk, let's collaborate. How can we uplift your histories, whether it's through oral history workshops or coming and interviewing you, or just providing you with the tools that you need to preserve your history, because the very fact that we are still here in Austin and that we're living in Austin today means we are making history. We are part of history, and our histories are important. It doesn't matter what station you have, what level of education that you have. We have these stories to share, and it's important. And so I'm grateful to have had this opportunity to work alongside this amazing team of people, and I'm grateful for all of you for being here to witness it with us, so thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Evie Carr, who did the voiceover.
Hello, hello. I feel like I need to be really mindful of my voice now. I'm Evie. I am Alabama-Coushatta and Apache. I was lucky enough to meet Shishu back in 2017, and I never left. I was lucky, yes, I'm one of the directors of the nonprofit now after having an opportunity to be one of her apprentices. And we joke a little bit, because I always want to say I wish it was like the Matrix and I could just plug in. Just because there is so much information. Like, I've been with her since 2017 through multiple school sessions, and every time there's new information, every time there's new stories. That's how much she has lived and experienced, and I'm just honored to be able to be part of that. And that's how I came to this project. I am an herbal person, I'm a plant person, but from a Western perspective, when I moved back to Texas, where I'm from, I didn't know half of what was growing out there. And to meet this woman who's driving down the road, stop, there's plants, is an amazing, amazing opportunity. And so my goal is to do whatever I can do to help her get her story out there, and that's how I came to do this. Anything she needs me to do, say, tell, do on the computer, whatever it is. I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do that with her, so thank you.
Dakote Ende. Greetings to all my relations. Thank you. Thank you. I am honored to be here. Try to not get too emotional. So instead I'll think of Mauricio. So bless his heart. He did everything he could to deal with us. And to me, that's the young generation. They're moving. They're constantly talking. They're not anchoring themselves. And so I would have to reel him back in and say, just stop. Just stop for a minute and listen. Just listen. So that's why, to me, that's the beauty of everything we do here. My medicine came from my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather lived to 107. So I had an opportunity to learn from things. And as he was saying, if he would bring up a bug, I'm like, that bug doesn't come from this area. That bug needs to go. No, that grass that he would put in, we're like, that doesn't grow here. Remove that grass. So, he was back and forth, back and forth. So that's the beauty of it. I also wanted to tell you that it was really hard because, as Dr. Luis says, you have to talk more, Marika, and that was really hard for me because of our upbringing, our teachings is learning to be quiet and to listen. And so that's what I try to teach my students, how important it is to listen to that person across from you when we're talking about becoming healers. I don't teach people to become herbalists, I teach them to become healers because that's the beauty of our work, our teachings, our medicine. And that is listening to the stories. We all have stories. We have been given stories, and in our silent time, we create stories. So it's really important to know that we can all heal, but we cannot all be cured. So our stories is a way to take that first step to healing and how important that is. And the plants here in Texas are very important, not just for us, but from the other tribes. And that's why they would gravitate towards Texas to come through here, because Texas has the highest antiviral plants. And that's why when winter rolls around, a lot of the Lakota people will contact me and say, can you please send us this plant, and all of this. So then that's our job, is to box and send everything we can up north so it can help them, especially when we had trouble with COVID. You know, with us, we do use a lot of the red sumac. That is such a beautiful, powerful plant for us. So that is a plant that's incorporated. So there's a lot that we go back and forth. You know, the big leaf for allergies and stuff. So we use a lot of big leaf ragweed that they don't get to grow up there. So we send it up there for them to help them with different issues. So that's what I mean. That's the beauty of what we have here, and how do we work with all of us to take care of each other. And so to me, that's really important. And I just want to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Marika, for being with us and for the gift of this film. We really appreciate it. We have a few minutes for questions. And I'll just repeat them because we're recording this. So.
I was curious how the documentary was chosen as the form as opposed to another aspect of visual or audio engagement. I know you do installations and things like that. So was there a conversation about what form would be most appropriate for this content?
So how was the documentary chosen as the form to present this content?
We had these conversations, and it has to do a lot with the role precisely of what Elder Marika Alvarado was pointing out, which is the role of oral communication and listening. So to produce an article, a written article together, or a book, didn't seem to us like the right format methodologically from an indigenous standpoint. So rather, I think in that sense, the audiovisual media enable us to have voices, on the screen, to generate a dynamic of listening, not only in terms of what we have now as a documentary video, but in the very process of producing this. What I was describing, like when we went to the Comanche Park, 38.5 Street at North Lamar, or Peace Park, or other sites in Austin area that have a significant, important native history, walking, talking to each other, talking back and forth, listening to Elder Marika Alvarado, dealing with voices. That kind of process, I think, for that kind of process, I think the audiovisual media was the most appropriate tool. So that's my perspective on this, to summarize multiple conversations we had, right?
Thank you very much. I'm so happy question about listening. So you've been mentioning a lot about like listening to each other, but I'm wondering about the role of listening to the territory too. Like how was that experience?
So the question is about listening to the territory as well as to each other.
Again, to me, everything has a story. So that's why we're talking about listening to the stories and how important it is to be still for a moment instead of the constant movement that I see the generations going through. Half the time when Dr. Luis would talk to somebody, they didn't even realize that Austin had the second largest plantation here. Half the people never even thought about it. So that's what I mean. These stories needed to be told, that all of this was here, and this is part of the stories. And again, when we say our stories, that's the beginning of healing.
Would you tell us please more about the Earth Healing Institute and if it is at the apex of where you would like it to be or what your vision is for it going forward and how we should support that?
This is a question about the Earth Institute and its future.
We are currently on sabbatical to kind of review that, actually. This is the first time we've taken a break from that. She's had it for 11 years. It's been an amazing opportunity. We've had some wonderful students come through, many who we're hoping will continue to do the healing work. But we realized just with everything, all the stories she is trying to tell and do and share, we have to reassess how we're doing that work and maybe offer it on a different, in a different venue, maybe make it a little bit more in a classroom online setting so that she can have the space and time to work more on women's health and telling other stories. And the cookbook everyone wants her to write. And, you know, when she's in as much demand as she is, it's, you know, we're having to shift our ideas on that. But we're still about the community and wanting to do, offer health fairs, give an opportunity for the students to come through and practice what they're learning. So those things are still being done and posted about whenever we have them.
And I'd like to acknowledge one amazing woman. Because if it wasn't for Dale Medical School that came out and said, why do people still see you? You know? So this wonderful young woman is the one that helped us put our nonprofit together and said, let us figure out how we can continue. So would you like to say something, beautiful lady? Lourdes, Dr. Lourdes?
Tai Guaitiao. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. It's so good to be here. Mi nombre es Lourdes Rodriguez, and I used to be in the faculty at the medical school in the Department of Population Health here in at Del Med. I am now working in health philanthropy. And my medicine is opening doors. So within the context of my role at the medical school, my role with the work of Elder Marika was to open doors, to connect her with the medical school, with Lone Star Circle of Care, with people who needed to hear, understand, value her work. So all I did was open doors. Maybe stick my foot or sometimes like my shoulder, but mostly opening doors. So I'm so happy to be here in this moment.
And of course, she's keeping a low profile, but to me, this was very important to us. I mean, she's an amazing woman. I know it was hard for you to call me Elder Marika because you always call me mujer. You know, every time she sends me a text, it's always mujer. And I was like, you know. But, you know, to me, it was very important because I feel that I'm opening doors to my young people, because I was the first to be inside of a medical clinic working with the doctors and still doing that work. So I do visit the clinics and do go to hospitals. I do also have private clients. And every time I have a certain client, I drag Evie with me because she wants to learn all she can about women's health and fertility, and I have a lot of fertility issues with women. So, you know, whether it's a thyroid issue, I'm pulling Evie with me and say, do you want to learn this? And she's there all the time. She's like, I want to learn. This is what I'm doing, and that's one thing about Evie. And that's what I mean. To me, it's really beautiful to understand, and I think it was, you were asking me about working with the women. To me, I work with the women because we are the cornerstone of our communities. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our children, and then comes our neighbors and our families and friends. So thank you, thank you.
Now I have a question for you, Elder Marika. No, one of the eye-opening moments for me was when we began to have the conversation about Peace Park and what used to be a cotton plantation there in the mid-19th century and Indian slavery in Texas. I never heard before that much about that. So can you expand a little more in regard to that untold history, especially beyond even Austin, because of all the experience of your relatives, members of your family?
So back in the 1800s, my grandfather was born in the 1800s. My grandmother was also a slave. And so, because if you were relocated and then you came back into Texas, then you were kept as a slave on different people's ranches, properties, and things like that. So my grandmother was up in Amarillo area. And so that's why, to us, it was important to tell these stories, to understand that, you know, people had the right to take someone and, you know, and do all of that. But to me, it was also the stories of listening to how important traditional healers were, because there's so much medicine. And so that's why, to me, it's important to understand what is your medicine. And, you know, it's like Lourdes that's been with me for a while. She now, all of a sudden, there was a light bulb going off and saying, oh, this is my medicine. I open doors for people. And that's what I do when I sit with my students, my young people, is to teach them and anchor them. As my grandmother used to say, don't get caught in the wind. I'll anchor you like the corn.
Well, thank you very much. I'm the director of the program in Native American and Indigenous Studies, Pauline Strong. I didn't introduce myself. And if you are new to NACE events, we want to invite you to return. We have an undergraduate certificate, we have a graduate portfolio, and we do 2 or 3 events a month to try to learn as much as we can about the indigenous peoples of Central Texas, but indigenous peoples in the Americas and globally. So thank you very much for coming. This is a very special occasion, and we do have some refreshments to share and to honor Elder Marika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think to me also one thing that we do have to remember is that we always have to ask permission, and we always speak to our elders. And believe it or not, I always have to ask permission and talk to my elders, and that would be my sister. So, and she would say, you're only allowed to say this much, not this much, whatever. So that's hard. It's always hard, you know, because we talk about how important it is, because there's a lot of tribes that don't want to speak about the medicines because they're afraid to lose it, and not realizing that's how we lose it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.